Hello, 8th grade artists. So now I have my warheads example completely drawn. I still have my grid on there. I still have all of my pencil lines. But at this point, I could do two things. I could erase the grid lines and then just double check my entire image just using my own eyesight and my perception of the reference image. Or you could do what I did and just kind of ignore the grid lines and do the exact same thing. So I ignored the grid lines and then just kind of looked through the entire image, looking at the computer for the reference image and looking at my drawing to make sure that they matched as closely as I could get them. And the reason I did that was because sometimes when you erase grid lines, you do accidentally erase some of the lines within the piece that you don't necessarily want to erase. So now at this point, I'm ready to go ahead and start in with my outlining on some of my pencil lines. And then once I go over everything with a ultrafine tip Sharpie or with a regular Sharpie or a combination of the two, once everything is all outlined, then I'll go back and I'll erase all of my pencil lines. Now remember, if you have a straight edge, so like here, for instance, where I have that 2, I'm going to just use a ruler to outline that space. And keep in mind, some of the pens work better than others. This one clearly does not work perfectly. So you would just want to make sure that you get a pen that does work really well, or just be patient with it. For this particular example, I'm just going to be patient with this pen so that you guys don't have to wait while I find another one. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over my straight lines first. And that's just a preference thing. I like to go over all of my straight lines first to kind of get me into the groove of outlining. Plus then that way, once I'm on all of the curved lines, I'm not going back and forth between using a ruler and not. So you'll see also that as I'm using the ruler, I'm kind of cleaning up some of these edges because these two lines should be parallel. But you can see that I've gotten my original line a little bit curved because I did not use a straight edge. So I'm going to make that sort of correction at this point. So it's perfectly okay if you are still making corrections to your drawing at this point. So let's see, looking for all of my straight lines. Most of the straight lines are going to be in the lettering and some of those types of details. And it is a good idea, of course, at this point to still have your reference image in front of you, because you don't want to accidentally outline something that you don't necessarily need to outline. Not to mention, you want to make sure that you're looking, because I know some of these letters, the lines that appear straight are not actually straight. So you would want to make sure that you are looking at your reference image so that you can make the correct line straight and not any of the lines you don't actually want straight. So still just using the ruler to get some of these straight edges in there. And then here where the R and the H meet, I'm not going to actually separate them the way I did the A and the R, because there's kind of a joining of the colors down there. So once again, I'm just kind of fixing this line so that that edge of the R is parallel to this one. This H, even though H's do typically have straight lines, does not. The E does have a straight line on this part, which does go a little bit in front of the H. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that overlapping here. And then the bottom is a straight edge. And then just kind of goes down just a little bit with the A. And this does connect all the way up, but I want to make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong on this portion. So I'm just going to move my ruler for a second and then put it back in place and then continue that line. And then this one dips down. And it goes pretty much up to the grid line there. And then this part of my A is straight, so I'm going to use the ruler there. And then it has a bit of an edge here. But then this is a curved line, so I'm not going to use my ruler. And then on the D, I will use my ruler, but it's going to go behind the A. So I'm going to stop that line when I get to the A. And then once again, I'm just going to correct this line because when I look at it, the two straight edges of the D are more parallel than I originally had them. And then this part is all curves. This part here is a straight line. Let's see. Some of these are straight lines as well, but they are small enough that I think I can freehand them pretty straight. Or what I can also do is just keep my straight edge handy. That way, if I do find that I need it, I can go back and forth a little bit. Let's see, this D has a straight edge on the outside part of its outline. So I think that that is pretty much all of my straight lines, with the exception of some of the spots in here and maybe this top part of the E. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and start working on some of the more curved areas, and then I'll keep my ruler close by so that as I get to anything else that should be a straight line, I can make that change as necessary. Oops, I did forget one little straight line down here. There we go. So now the rest of that splatter is sort of curvy. So I'm going to go ahead and start in. I could start with the splatter. I could start wherever I wanted. But I am going to go ahead and start just going over my pencil lines slowly and as neatly as possible. Once again, I'm still looking at my reference image because I do want to make sure that I make it match the reference image as much as possible. So this is a step during which you want to be very careful. You probably will not be talking very much, just because it does take a little bit of extra focus. Definitely feel free to turn the page whenever you need to. Because it is quite true that sometimes we draw lines better in certain directions. So you want to make sure that you are giving yourself that advantage whenever you can. So right there, I was just using my ruler to make sure that this and this are parallel. And I'm going to do the same thing on this part of the 2. Because I cannot stress how important it is. Even if you're working on an area and you realize you've forgotten to outline something with the ruler, go back and get the ruler. Do not try to freehand something that you don't think you can freehand. Now, because this whole area, the splatter is black, it's okay if I have some of these lines that sort of connect and turn them into separate shapes, because eventually I will not be able to tell that I have done that because I'm going to be coloring the splatter in black. So like that line, for instance, that separates these two parts is not going to show up by the time I'm completely done. So again, turn the page whenever you need to. Go nice and slow and take your time. So there I've got my 2 and the splatter outlined, and it would be ready to go ahead and erase those pencil lines. So now I'm going to go ahead and move along here. And everybody has different preferences when it does come to outlining. Some people like to, like I'm doing, outline the entire outside first and then sort of work your way in. Other people like to start on the inside and work their way out. Some people even just kind of go randomly about it and pick and choose where they outline first. It's completely up to you. I want you to focus on doing whatever makes you the most comfortable at this point, because it does take some finesse and some focus to get your entire shape outlined. So you can see there, my pen kind of messed me up a bit. So I'm just going to slowly and carefully go back over that, trying to fill in those little gaps, because once again, I have a bit of a dry pen. So one thing that is important to notice here is that I am not sketching. A lot of times when we draw with our pencil, we pick the pencil up as we're making a curve. When you are outlining with a pen, you kind of don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are doing everything as smoothly as you can. So I know that some of your lines might be a little bit shaky, especially at the beginning, and that's okay. Just do the best that you can to keep things nice and smooth. And try not to pick up the pen on each individual line. So as you can see here, I'm picking the pen up between curves, but then it meets on a point. I'm not picking the pen up in the middle of that curve. So what that does is allow me to readjust how I'm holding the pen and my position of the paper without messing up the outline that I am currently working on. So now I've got sort of the whole outside part of his face and his hair and all of that stuff outlined. So then my next step would be to go ahead and work my way in, down here on his face and up here within his little cloud area. And then I would erase all of my pencil lines before I start adding any color.